How do you feel about taxidermy? Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books. So this is part 2 of my June reading wrap up, and if you've seen part 1 you'll know that I'm trying to make an effort to make shorter videos because I think that appeals to more of my subscribers, and if you're one of those, thank you very much. And so I decided to split my wrap up into books that I read for reading challenges or just because, and I've put that in the video that went up on Saturday, and I will link that in the description below as well so you don't miss that. Today is the second part in which I'm going to talk about the new releases that I've read. So I've got 4 books to talk about, 2 3-star reads, a 4-star read and a 5-star read. These were all NetGalleys that I was sent in return for a review, but all of my opinions are completely my own. My 3-star read was Fat Girl Finishing School by Rachel Wiley, which came out on the 23rd of June. And this is a poetry collection, so I'm gonna put a disclaimer here and say that I am not a poetry reader. I know that I should read poetry, but I just don't know how to, like, unless it rhymes and has like a rhythm. And this isn't a collection written for a basic poetry bitch like me. But even saying that, I still really enjoyed it. I really felt the emotion and the humour in these poems and enjoyed them to the extent that my ability would allow me. It was the title of this book that drew me to it, living in a bigger body myself. I always really like to read about other people's experiences, but actually, although I did really enjoy the poems that related to her fat experience, I actually really enjoyed her other poems that dealt with loads of other topics, but particularly her experience as a white passing mixed race woman. And what I got most from this is like, this is a really personal collection, and I felt quite honoured that she has shared this with us, so I'm glad I read this, and I really want to sharpen my poetry skills. My next 3-star read was Progress Over Perfection, A Mindful Guide to Productivity by Emma Norris, and this was out on the 26th of May. This book is a gorgeous thing to look at, and if you're going to buy it, I would definitely recommend you get a physical copy rather than an ebook, because everything is just such a joy to look at. It's so well considered, the colour palette, the layout, it's just beautiful. And Emma Norris has a really friendly, non-preaching voice when she's giving out the advice that's in this book. She speaks from a place of experience rather than the place from an expert, and it really comes across well. In terms of the content, I would say this is probably more of a primer for people who are just getting into how to be kind to themselves while also getting their shit together. I'm slightly off the beginner blocks in terms of this topic, at least in the theory. Actually applying it to my life is a whole different story. So I don't really think that I learned anything new from this, but I think it's helpful to hear these messages in different ways, through different voices, and definitely for me, some of the concepts that she discussed and the ways that she discussed them framed them in a way that I could relate to a bit more than I maybe have in the past. So I think this is a wonderful book to give as a gift to someone you want to show some loving kindness to, especially if that person is yourself. My 4-star read was Mostly Dead Things by Kirsten Arnett, which was out on the 2nd of July. And I think I need to start this by saying that this book will not be for everyone. So if you don't like dysfunctional families, turn away now. But more than that, if you are in any way squeamish, if you find taxidermy repulsive, or if lengthy descriptions complete with sounds, smells, sometimes even tastes of animal dissection would upset you even slightly, then run. Go now. But if you're okay with all of that, or you can at least stomach it, then please pick up this book, because underneath the roadkill and the discarded innards and the exposed tendons and the murdering of peacocks, there is a pretty interesting story here. So Jessalyn and her family are kind of reeling from the death by suicide of her father, but also that her brother's wife, Bryn, has walked out without a word from the family as well. Jess is struggling to take over the family taxidermy business, walking in her father's shadow while mourning the loss of Bryn, who was the only woman that she has ever loved. Meanwhile, her mum is acting out, making strange porno scenes with taxidermied animals, and her brother is being really distant and definitely not being the father that his two children need. This is a study of a family in turmoil with some really nice dark wit and an eye for how people cope or don't cope with grief. I loved Jess's character in all her grubby, flawed, conflicted mess, and I also really loved how Florida itself becomes a bit of a character in this book, and it gave the story like a really great stage to play out on. I do think at times things kind of swing off into ridiculousness, but most of the time they are pulled back to the human heart of the story. So if you've got a strong stomach, I would recommend this one. My 5-star read was also out on the 2nd of July, and it is Breaking and Mending, a doctor's story of burnout and recovery by Joanna Cannon. I've read quite a few memoirs by medical professionals, and I find that they focus on recounting stories of interesting, funny or sad patients. And this book is different. Yes, there are stories of patients, but more than that, there's like a deep, warm heart to this book. Joanna tells these stories not because they make a good tale, although they definitely do, but because she was shaped by them. She recalls these stories not just as a doctor, but as a compassionate human being who's indelibly marked by the people that she cared for. A side effect of this was her own mental health, and this book is really open and honest about the pressures on the NHS and the strain that junior doctors are under. I've worked in quite a lot of clinical settings myself, and so I recognised a lot of the people that she talked about in terms of, you know, the mentor or the bully or the sycophant or the guardian angel, and the way that these can influence and impact on someone who's just trying to make their way through a complex and terrifying profession. Her story of a confidence crisis and burnout really resonated with me, not because she responded in the same way that I did, because viewer, I quit, but because of her ability to share her experiences and her emotions in such a beautiful voice. Although this is set in the world of the hospitals, there's nothing sterile or clinical about this. It's raw and open and honest. She sees patients as people, and I think in reading this book we see not just a doctor but a human being, and I absolutely love this. I thought it was gorgeous, and it will stay with me for quite a while. So a nice pile of new releases for June, and I hope you're encouraged to pick at least one of them up. Let me know if any of them have piqued your interest, and let me know, how do you feel about taxidermy? Until next time, bye. Progress over perfection. I